All right, hello, and welcome to the second in our series of audio-enabled EDA STEP workshop sessions. We're glad you're all here. My name is Annette, and I'm in full recovery from an eating disorder. Before we get started, a few caveats. This session of the EDA STEP workshop is being recorded. We hope to make audio recordings of the workshop accessible to everyone. Please note that the audios will not be available on the EDA website until they've gone through the full vetting process. We will, however, be sending information about the recordings to the GSB email distribution list. If you're not currently on the GSB email contact list, please drop a line at recordersanonymous.org and we'll get you added. Reminder, listening to a recording is not a substitute for attending EDA meetings or working the steps. We encourage you to check out our meetings pages, which include face-to-face, online, and teleconference meetings. Just like what you might find in an EDA group, what you're about to hear reflects the experiences and opinions of individual EDA members that may or may not tally with their own experiences. Please take what you can use and leave the rest. One last thing, you don't need a sponsor to attend and work the steps. We will be working the steps of EDA together, myself included. To make things easier for everyone, please mute your phone by using *6 on your phone to mute or unmute if you're using like a cell phone. If you're on a computer, using Alt-A will do exactly the same thing. So mute yourself or unmute yourself with Alt-A. If it gets noisy, I'll have to mute everybody. And to do that, just unmute yourself if you want to speak. And I'm hoping that you will. We'd like to get lots of questions and answers in. So about half our program tonight will be to answer your questions. Because there are so many of us, we won't all get a chance to introduce ourselves. However, if you're speaking, please tell us your first name and where you're from. Last week, we talked a little bit about, hang on, we're going to switch to the next page. One of the things we're going to be doing in this workshop is to work the steps together and talk about how we actually go about that process so that you feel comfortable and encouraged to continue doing that with others. And also, if you are able to, if you've been through the steps in another fellowship, working the steps in this workshop format will give you the ability to sponsor others in EDA. We also want to demonstrate how we support each other in working the steps through our question and answer series. So one of the things I'd like to do before we get started is to talk to people in the room and also on the phone who sponsor. So my name is Annette, and I'm in full recovery from an eating disorder, and I sponsor. I'm going to pass to a few sponsors here in the room.
Hi, my name is Kale, and I am in recovery from an eating disorder, and I live here in Phoenix, and I also sponsor folks.
Hi, my name's Giselle, and I am in full recovery from an eating disorder, and I live in Maricopa here in Arizona, and I also sponsor.
And we'll go to folks on the call. Who do we have that sponsors that can identify themselves?
This is Nuria from Charleston, South Carolina. I have recovered from an eating disorder, and I sponsor as well.
Hi, this is Stacy, and I'm in Pensacola, Florida, and I've recovered from an eating disorder and sponsor as well.
My name is Lana. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. I'm in recovery from an eating disorder, and I sponsor.
Hi, this is Ellen calling from Texas. I've recovered from my eating disorder and I sponsor.
Hi, this is Leslie in New York City, and I'm in recovery from eating disorder. I sponsor.
And more may be joining. So we'll thank you so much for identifying, and we'll look forward to hearing from you, especially the sponsors, as we go to the Q&A portion of the steps. We really are eager to have people that have sponsored others to go ahead and get started explaining how they've worked the steps or answering any questions that come up. So tonight, we're going to be covering a couple of things, but first of all, I wanted to share that we didn't actually get to do much with our content last week because of that we had so much difficulty with technical challenges, but we covered a lot of things. We talked about the distinctions and the samenesses between EDA and other 12-step fellowships, and here's some references to things that are distinct and the same. So this is part of the deck that we would have presented. And also, we talked a lot about the things that are supportive of people that are searching for recovery that we can find in any 12-step fellowship. Some of that is about just a desire to recover and to use steps and to inform our process. The 12 steps and traditions. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody because it sounds like we're at that point where it does seem like we're going to need that. Hold on just a minute. Let me see if I have that ability, because I did. And mute. I'm hovering over this. And nope, I think I can mute myself. This is a little awkward because muting everybody is actually just super important. Okay, let's try this. Manage participants and mute all. Yay. So to unmute, *6 or Alt-A. There we go. And there we go. Excellent. Now we're where we should be. Welcome to those who've just joined. So we're talking briefly now about not just what's the same and different, but we're going to move on today to talk about a few other things. So we're going to reflect on last week's homework, which included reading the preface, which we talked about last week. And we didn't really do reading on balance yet. That's coming. But we were supposed to read about the doctor's opinions, letters of support, and we worked an eating disorders log. If you did, great. If not, you can catch up. Although we have a lot of homework for next week. So here we go. We're going to talk briefly about the doctor's opinions. And I'm going to get started just because I did actually know several of these doctors, and then we're going to talk about a few others. So Dr. Ray Lemberg is one of the doctors that wrote our very first introduction to the EDA Big Book. And his section starts on page, hold on. It's right on page XIX. Right. So, and Dr. Lemberg opened the very first clinical practice here, the first psychiatric inpatient program in Arizona in 1980, and it did deal with eating disorders. So it was actually the first one in the country. We thought he was important to include, not just because of that kind of, he's really written a lot about eating disorders recovery, both for men and for women, for different types of disorders, very well respected in the field, but also because this man was not a fan of 12-step recovery. Okay, so that's one of the reasons that I thought he'd be important to include, because he is a convert. A convert, I know that's probably too extreme, but Dr. Lemberg wrote for us because he really does have faith in this approach. And the way that we wrote about 12-step recovery actually does speak and addresses some of his concerns about some of the emphasis on some things that we've de-emphasized. So he really likes the fact that we focus on balance, and he really likes the fact that we've opened the doors wider to folks who are looking for perhaps not necessarily as much emphasis on spirituality at the outset of this journey. So that was a little bit about Dr. Lemberg. And Dr. Summer Aid has also been somebody that was really important at the foundation of our EDA groups here in Phoenix. She really focused a great deal on the value of building trust with ourselves, with others, with something that's more powerful than ourselves to inform and help give us the perspective and the peace that it takes to build a foundation that's really strong. So I really love what she wrote, and it's funny because it feels like it covers the gamut of what it means to have an eating disorder, and then she gives us so much hope about having seen people come to recovery from every age, from every gender, from every size, from every family of origin type of history, people that feel connected to themselves and their bodies, and people that are just don't feel that sense of wholeness at all. So I really appreciate what she wrote. And then there's Dr. Lucretia Hall. I'm going to let a few other folks speak about this. So Diana, are you on by any chance? *6 to unmute.
Hi, this is Diana.
Hi, Diana. Welcome.
Hi. I'm fully recovered from an eating disorder, and I'm also a professional in the field. And I just wanted to say how much this section really means to me. I was struggling with the eating disorder all through my master's program, and I was actually studying eating disorders, I think more so to help myself and help my sister too, who was struggling. And I could never really find something that gave me a lot of insight on what was going on with me, because most of the stuff I found was a huge emphasis on behaviors. And that's really what I was preoccupied with at the time. It was just, I was obsessed with like food, weight, and body image. So when I came across this book, which was still a PDF at the time, I still remember like sitting in my room, looking at my laptop, reading these opinions, and Dr. Summer Aid's opinion is what really stood out to me, because it was like the first time I really had a lot of insight on what the underlying feelings were that was going on with me. And my favorite, I still can't read this section without crying because of how much it relates to me. But the one I always come back to, and the sentence that I always use when I'm talking with my clients or even other professionals is being able to feel all of my feelings and know that they have nothing to do with food, and being able to feel all of my feelings and know that they won't kill me, because I didn't think I could really feel what I was feeling without being so overwhelmed that I really thought I was going to die. So reading that really gave me some hope in what recovering from an eating disorder would be like. And then reading Lucretia Hall's opinion was it. One sentence really stood out to me, and it was, when you're ready to give up your eating disorder, that's like when you can finally recover. And at that point, I was like, I'm ready. Like, I'm really ready to give this up. And it also helps me understand what other people are dealing with when they're not quite ready, because it does serve a function for a period of time. And I needed it. I needed it for a period of time. And now that I'm ready to face it, it no longer serves its purpose anymore, but it still helps me understand what other people are going through when they're not quite ready to give it up. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Diana. That's really lovely to hear. And I've also asked Nuria to speak a little bit. Both she and Stacy know Dr. Hall. And so Nuria, would you care to share your experience with the doctor's opinion or Dr. Hall? *6 to unmute. Let's go to Stacy. Stacy, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent.
Yeah, Dr. Hall, I do know personally. She owned a transitional living facility, which I lived in for about 10 months, and then also ended up managing it for almost 2 years. And you know, the things that stand out to me most in her, in her letter, the thing that I love the most was where she says that it's on XXVII. So what is that? 28, page 28 in the beginning. Is, in my experience, every person who has been successful in recovery has had at least one person somewhere along their journey with whom they could be totally honest. Someone who, without judgment, behaved as if success was a viable option, despite previous setbacks. It is the presence of trusting relationships that allow people to accept their truth, no matter how painful it may be. This gives them the freedom to change. For me, she taught us a lot about being honest. And that has been the biggest thing for me over the past 10 years is, that I'm honest about everything, no matter what, because I know that my secrets are keeping me sick.
Thank you, Stacy.
And can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, good. It's Nuria. Sorry.
Oh, hi, Nuria.
I was trying to unmute before, but I couldn't. So is it okay, Stacy, if I chime in now?
Yep, I'm done.
Okay. And that's the thing is Dr. Lucretia Hall, here is another professional who works in the field of eating disorders, who sees and understands why it's so important to not sit here and focus on, you know, the food, the body, and the weight. Here's another professional that knows, like, okay, what is going on underneath? That's what we have to get to. And so as a result, because she believed that way as well, believe that, just like we in Eating Disorders Anonymous, you know, we get down to the causes and conditions, we see what's going on. We don't sit here and focus on food in meetings. We don't focus on weight in meetings. You know, we talk about solution and what we're feeling and so forth. And so here's another professional yet again who supports the 12 steps, you know, getting down to like the nitty gritty, like what is going on underneath. And that's the thing is on Roman numeral 27, which is XXVII, she really brings that out. You know, at the bottom, an eating disorder is not about food, the body, or weight. It's an ineffective solution to a problem that has become concealed to the point of being unrecognizable. You know, and that's the thing is like, I didn't even really know. I thought it was a solution, those things, but they weren't. They weren't working. You know, and an affected eating disorder successfully distracts everyone from focusing on the true problem underneath, right? I never could focus on what was going underneath because I was so distracted by the food, by my body, and by my weight and so forth. So here's a professional who like just to a T could describe what I was experiencing and, you know, on the other side, like experiencing solutions. That once I started working the 12 steps of EDA and I wasn't focusing on the food in my body, I was focusing on like what was going on underneath and like the solution and the tools of recovery, all of a sudden, all the other issues with my food, body, and weight started to get better.
Nuria, thank you. That is so amazing and so true for all of us. I've asked Joy also to chime in. Joy, do you have any comments on Doctor's opinion?
Yeah, I was also really resonating with what Dr. Hall said about the food and body image and things are just a distraction from what's really going on. And then I was really putting that together with what Dr. Aid said about, she just gave this beautiful description of first you feel like this and you feel completely entrenched and like nothing's ever going to change. And then she talks about this long gradual process of change where it's almost imperceptible. And, you know, kind of connecting that with the idea of trust being necessary. I once heard a definition of trust that has really stuck with me, and that is that trust is a...
Hello, dead air.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
That trust is a history.
Yes, I was just wondering why it was so quiet.
We're going to mute everybody. Sorry about that.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, so I'm muting everybody. Joy, you're going to have to unmute. Okay, go ahead, Joy.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I was connecting it with this idea of trust as a history of fulfilled expectations. So it's not something you just give or get right off the bat. That's the benefit of the doubt. But establishing trust is history. So of course it takes time. And so I find that so encouraging when I feel like I'm at this, you know, point partway through my recovery where I've worked the program for a while, but my body shape is still, you know, a health issue for me. And just going, okay, then you just do the next right thing over and over and over, and you connect with people over and over and over, and that builds that history, which is that trust, which is what you need to be able to work on those underlying things and not have to focus on this distraction of an eating disorder. And I really liked the way they kind of clarified that.
Thank you, Joy. I really appreciate that. So one of the reasons that we included both the doctor's opinions and letters of support was to try and make it clearer to everyone that we have broad-based support, both within the professionals that support people looking for recovery from eating disorders, professionals that work in the treatment and prevention, and also from other folks that have a wide following among folks that are looking for solutions, regardless of whether they're looking for professional support or not. So a few folks came to mind, and the first of those was Jenny Schaefer. It's like her books sell like hotcakes because she writes with such grace and such humor and such warmth that I just was drawn to her and her writing. And I thought, okay, so I'll write her. And I wrote a couple other folks. And lo and behold, Jenny wrote back. And the reason that I mean, she knocked me off my feet because as she's writing, I'm reading this stuff and she's like, yeah. And so EDA was part of my recovery. And so she was like, it gave me goosebumps when you wrote it, asking for me to write a letter in. And I thought, wow, that's really coming full circle. So I really wanted to just be transparent about this because I know that having somebody that is in the program write about, so she's like not anonymous, right? Well, she was not anonymous before she joined any kind of meetings. So anyway, but that's why she's in there, is partially because I had not realized that she'd had any kind of recovery through our program, but she does. And so that's kind of cool. But the reason we included her is not because she's a member, but because she's a respected person in the field of eating disorders treatment and prevention. So anyway, she comes with lots of credentials, and those are listed here for us on page XXXI, letters of support. And I've asked Giselle to read or to speak just a little bit about that.
Hi, Giselle. I really enjoyed, I've gotten to know Jenny a little bit and spend a little bit of time with her. She was one of our keynote speakers at the Chicago workshop, and she is phenomenal. And like Annette said, she's funny, she's lighthearted, but she knows this is a serious, deadly disease. And in the beginning of her story, she talks about one of her techniques was to call her eating disorder ED, ED, and she put a name to it. She put a face to it. And I know I like that because even when I was only in AA in the beginning, I knew my disease wants me dead, and it had a face, it had a name. And so I really like that. And then, she talks about how, she just talks about how when she talked about when she first came into her first meeting of eating disorders, she was underweight, but yet she still sat around. Because it doesn't matter what you look like, how thin or overweight or anything or whatever you think you are, your disease wants you dead, and it will scream at you and say you're not thin enough, you're not heavy enough, you're not this enough, you're not enough, and so you can't recover. And then she, it just, her story, it just brings me a lot of hope, and it doesn't matter who you are or where you came from. This disease wants me dead. And but she still brings so much humor and so much truth. It makes me want to read her books more and over again, just because. And I can't wait until she writes another. I hope she is right now. Oh, good. So I'm excited for that one. So anyway, just really a great human being all the way around.
Okay, and I've asked Kale to speak briefly about Robin Cruz's letter of support. Here you go, Kale.
Thanks, Annette. This is Kale. Again, I'm in recovery from my eating disorder. So Robin Cruz is the author of Making Peace with Your Plate and Lovely Dreams. I have about like 75% of her letter of support highlighted, so it's really good. But I'll just bring up a couple of points. One of my favorite parts about this program of EDA is that it encourages us all to take advantage of every resource that we have available to us to find recovery. And so I think that it is great that we have the professional opinions that are in support of our program, as well as other folks like Jenny and Robin, who are also very familiar with eating disorders and knowledgeable. So the point I want to pull out of Robin's letter of support is on XXVIII. It's like 38 in Roman numerals. But she says at the bottom of the first paragraph, just as we benefit from appropriate treatment for our mental, emotional, and physical concerns, we also need people to identify with who inspire us through the ups and downs of ongoing recovery. She goes on the next page. I'll just skip over it for brevity's sake, but I really related a lot to when she talks about the pain of isolation. Our illness, or my illness at least, thrives in secrecy, and it only exists in secrecy. So talking about it more and relating to other people who are on the same journey as I am was really key to my recovery. And she writes about that very eloquently when she says at the top of that next page, many of us who struggled in the isolation of our illness desperately crave connection. Our eating disorders closed us off from the whole or from the outside world, promising that they would set us free once we fulfilled their demands. Well, they lied. Recovery is not achieved in seclusion. After all, a sick mind can't treat a sick mind. Recovery takes a village. It grows on support and love. Knowing that we are not alone and that others are on the same journey are healing tools freely offered in 12-step meetings. Eventually, we discover that we begin to trust ourselves, or trust others and later ourselves, and that, my friends, is the gift of recovery. So trusting in others and really taking a part of the group aspect, and the fact that we can all typically relate in one way or another is really what sticks out to me. So it further emphasizes the point of going to meetings and getting involved, working with the sponsor, and really connecting and becoming vulnerable with people. I think it was a key to my recovery, and I recommend it. So.
Thank you, Cal. And I wanted to also point out that there's a lot of really great stuff in Robin Cruz's section where she talks about, feeling like, you're about to go climb a mountain or climb down a mountain. Like, if you've ever been rappelling, and the first time when you just go over the edge of the cliff, it's terrifying. And you're like, no, I can't. It's just so scary. And the idea of launching into recovery, losing the support that the eating disorder provided that felt like, again, we use our eating disorders because it makes life feel more manageable. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. It doesn't actually make your life more manageable. It really kind of like destroys your life, but it feels more manageable because you've dulled the emotion. So, but starting into recovery really does require us to trust others, because those people are our climbing gear. Those people are our climbing shoes and our tackle and our ropes and our guides, and we can take steps, baby steps. So there's all kinds of great stuff in there, and I really think just like the other authors, Robin's stuff is really worth reading. One of the reasons that we have 4 letters of support is because we wanted a diversity of perspectives. So our next letter is from Pastor John. Pastor John is in Delray Beach, which is one of the meccas, recovery meccas of the U.S., and we asked him to write, actually, because we needed a counter. One of the things we do, our last letter is from Roger C., who speaks from the atheist perspective. We want to be clear that EDA's heart is one founded in spirituality, and founded in this idea that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity, whether that is a power you call God or something that maybe doesn't have something that's as tied up with religion. And your idea of God is really what matters, or your idea of something greater than yourself that can bring perspective to your life is good enough too. So that's what Roger writes about. But I've asked, actually, Cale, I'm going to call on you again, read a little bit or talk a little bit about Pastor John's letter.
Well, thanks, Annette. Yeah, I really liked, Annette, that you brought up the point of diversity. When I went back to read this again to talk a little bit about it today, the first thing that stuck out to me is, it's Pastor John. It's a man. Which I really liked, as being a male with an eating disorder. It's oftentimes thought of as being, heavily females. So, Pastor John's letter of support, starts out, my name is John and I am a recovered alcoholic. I am also a person who has struggled with disordered eating and body image issues my whole life. That really stuck out to me. because you don't often hear about guys having as many body issues, but it's true. I mean, eating disorders do not discriminate based on sex, age, race, or any other socio-demographic. So in further to that point, I really, or not further to that point, but another part of the reading other than the fact he's a male that I really enjoy, is that he has found recovery through working the 12 steps, not only in AA, but also, using the same steps in a different way to find recovery again. He talks about, the big difference between EDA and AA is, he says, unlike with my alcoholism, I cannot just be abstinent from food. So it kind of reiterates that, primary part of EDA that, like Annette said, we're going to talk a little bit more about later, is balance over abstinence. And him, working the 12 steps in 2 different ways is really kind of cool. And it shows that spirituality aspect really does work. And then at the top of the next page on XLIII, he sums it up really well when he says that the 4 main movements in the 12 steps that help him to remember the shape of the recovery before him is, 1 is remembering and admitting his problem, which is being powerless. 2, embracing and adhering to the solution. For him, it is enjoying and exalting God. And 3, knowing which strategies will reinforce my commitment to growth and change. And then 4, live with a purpose greater than myself by putting God and others before me. And I think that that's a really good summary. And actually on the page before that, I really liked how it's summed up by saying that he needs a simple and ongoing program of action if he is able to protect the freedom that he has gained. And I think that that's a really important part because, the ongoing program, our work's not done. It's like living in the solution full time. So those were my major takeaways from him. And I'll bring it back to Annette.
Thanks again, Kale. So Roger C., we're just going to touch on briefly. The main reason we included this was to make it clear that the foundations of AA also embraced atheists and agnostics. It wasn't just that it was a program of spiritualists and Christians, because really this was founded by folks who had been exposed to the Oxford group, which is a very Christian group. And we don't deny these roots, okay? It's really an important component. And we support everyone who embraces an Orthodox religion or an unorthodox religion in EDA. It isn't that we have some kind of a litmus test. And I know in some places it's thought that perhaps AA is like to move too far away from organized religion. And we embrace everybody where they are. So whatever it is that you trust, whatever is true for you, as Dr. Lucretia Hall stated, whatever she found that looks like recovery has two significant components: trust and truth. And so whatever that means to you, go for it. So Roger C.'s letter also points out that Bill W., one of the founders of AA, when confronted with groups who wanted to use greater good instead of God in the 12 steps, had no problem with it. So I just want everybody to recognize that this whole idea of opening the doors to those who may not be able to see things in the same way you do has very deep roots in AA, as well as really being at the heart of EDA. So moving on, we're going to talk briefly about how it works, because all of this stuff is leading up to this idea that we actually need to do something to change the way we orient ourselves in the world. Okay, so if you've got an eating disorder, you're actively utilizing something to give you peace and perspective on your life that makes it manageable. And to change that, you're going to have to come up with something different and better, okay? Or you'll just keep going right back to it, And it's really hard to develop that trust. But on page 110 in the EDA Big Book, we start talking a little bit about how this works. And that's important because the next 3 things you're going to hear about are about how other people apply these ideas in order to effect a full and deep recovery. So just like other 12-step programs, AA's 12 steps or EDA's 12 steps are founded in this idea of rigorous honesty and integrity. But unlike some, we don't insist on abstinence first. We recognize that recovery from an eating disorder is a gradual process and that the foundation for a different kind of life takes a lot of time and commitment to develop. Through continuous daily practice, we slowly learn to rely on new ideas and perspectives that work as we let go of old ideas that kept us stuck in a cycle of misery and hopelessness. The AA text goes on to say some fairly dramatic things about, it's like those who do this halfway aren't going to make it, basically, and that those who don't have the capacity to be honest can't recover. And honestly, my experience has been that everyone can recover. Not everybody does, because sometimes we aren't patient enough with this process. But I don't think it's true that anyone cannot recover. I've yet to really give up hope on anybody, and I swear, if you hang in there, full recovery is possible for everyone. So we think everyone can recover, and it's completely normal, though, for everyone who's had an eating disorder to continue to engage in old patterns of thought and behavior until they have, through repeated and determined practice, learned to rely more heavily on their new foundation created through working the steps than on their eating disorder. So we have to find a different way of relating to the world, and we do that by working the steps. This is a brand new way of working that enables us to find peace, power, and perspective that we formerly lacked. The other thing that we discovered in EDA is that we can't really fix this, our way of looking at the world, by focusing on ourselves. It just doesn't work. It's too much for us, just like it says in the AA text. Instead, we have to allow change to happen within and through us by recognizing that, first of all, that removing ourselves from the center of our own attention and placing our focus on something else actually holds great promise. And so that's kind of what people who have faith in an organized religion have going for them, because you know what? They've already kind of half done that. Recognizing and realizing how difficult that is what, this program will help you engage with. For those who don't have that, it's really about working with what you really do believe. And for some of us, that may not be anything that looks very mystical. But in all cases, to provide perspective and meaning for our lives, we have to replace self-centeredness and self-focus with focus on God-centeredness or on service to the greater good. It's really that simple, and it's not easy. One of the things that we had to recognize is that doing that means that we have to take care of our basic needs. So that means we have to eat, we have to sleep, and oh my gosh, we have to eat. Are you kidding me? If we could do that, why would we even be here, right? But the reality is we have to build trust that we can do this as adults, that we can take care of us, make sure that we have food, shelter, primary relationships, or we're just going to be too selfish to recover. Now that's a thought, right? Until we take care of our own basic needs, build trust with ourselves to be an adult, full recovery is not really going to be possible. And focusing on full recovery isn't the thing. It's a byproduct of doing the next right thing. So how do we get there? We recognize that it's our responsibility to take care of ourselves. And we start, and it's painful as heck. Taking care of ourselves, man, we've really blown it. Usually by the time we get here, we have long histories of how we have not done that at all. And so we work the 12 steps of EDA, and I'm not going to cover them in great detail, but we're going to hear tons of them as we go through the rest of this. But many of us first reacted to the list of the 12 steps by saying something like, they say in AA, what an order, I can't go through with it. And in the same way that AA members comfort newcomers, we in EDA are happy to reassure, don't be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. The point is that we're willing to grow along these lines that we've set down. We aim for balance, understanding that our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. We claim progress, never perfection. And it goes on, and there's 3 main points: that we had serious problems that we couldn't solve ourselves, that no accessible human power that we've connected with was able to solve or relieve our eating disorders, and that reliance on something greater than ourselves, God, a higher power, or a higher purpose, could and would restore us to sanity, balance, and set us free. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Giselle for just a few minutes to talk briefly about kind of like what it was like, what it's like now, we'll go back, start that over again, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. But we're really close to being out of time, so we're going to be very short. You guys are going to hear a lot from me, so I'm going to not talk about my story, but I would like Giselle and Nuria to be able to share theirs. So here you go.
All right. Well, just a few minutes. I don't know. Okay. So my story, which it's in the book. So you can read it. I'll just give a quick. I was lost. I mean, that was my basic thing. Is I was lost. I had no direction, and that was it. That was me. I had no direction, and then I had my kid. And then I'm supposed to be an adult. I'm supposed to be a mom. I'm supposed to be all these things. And I couldn't do it. I had no idea what in the heck I was doing. And, but I loved her, and that's all I knew. And so, I started recovery. I started the best I could and had small little hopes. And I call them, little sprickets. I'd be driving down the road, and I would have this little thought of, you know what, it might be okay. And then I was back to, I'm going to die. But I would have these little sprickets of moments where I felt okay. And I had to grasp on that. And those turned into a little bit longer and a little bit longer, because I talk about in my story, my safety net was suicide, so that was something I had to give up as well, is this idea that I'm just going to die, and that's it. I had to give that up too. I think that was just part of my disease. And, but I don't know. I eventually found hope. I just kept going with it. And, thank God I met Annette, and my story, nothing happens, nothing happens in God's world by mistake. There was a woman in AA that said that I just took with me, and that's what I believe. And I met Annette, and it was just supposed to happen, and all this. And I truly believe that this was a godsend, and my idea of God has changed over the time. I don't have the typical religious, God. God. It's everything. It's everywhere, and he's in everything and everyone. And so I gain a lot of strength just from being, I can be, and I can be in my own skin, and I can enjoy the surroundings, and I can see it now. And I just, my recovery really started when I could stand on my own 2 feet and be comfortable in my own skin and just be. And that was a huge deal for me in my life. And you can read the rest of my story. And maybe you can gain some hope. And, cause nobody has done anything so bad or so wrong or so horrible that they can't recover. I mean, I was lost, and, I thought there was no hope. I thought I was one of those that couldn't get it, but it's not true. Our disease wants us to believe that, but it's not true. And I'm going to read some ideas. Okay, here's some ideas that help me find balance and perspective and maintain my recovery. And these are some of those things. Do first things first. Take care of basics. And prioritize by what matters in the long run. Do one thing at a time. A day at a time is too much for us, especially in early recovery. Oh my gosh, that's so true. Be true to yourself. Be honest and be kind. Integrity builds recovery. I had no idea what that word meant in the beginning. Integrity. I had no idea what that meant. I was a liar and a thief and a great manipulator. I was a great manipulator, because that's what we do. At least that's what I did. And be at peace. Recovery is not a box that you fit your life into. It is open and free. I had God. I had everything in a box, and there were certain things that happened throughout my life. My mom died, and I read a book called The Shack, and that just, I think, took God out of the box, because I was raised in a real legalistic church. And that experience, my mom dying and leaving me with just a pile of poo, just helped me to start letting things out of the box, because I can't, nothing is like supposed to be on this line, you know, everything goes blurry, and it's okay. You know, I had a friend who was anorexic, and she had this, you know, she wanted me to go with her and be on this food plan. And I'm like, I can't do a food plan like that for life. I can't do it. That's putting it in a box, and I can't put food in a box, you know? And so it was just, and that's kind of like that balance thing. It goes in every aspect of my life. And that's so important, to look at every aspect. And, okay. And so then we forget about counting days and years of recovery. It's not at all about the time. And I didn't know when I hit full recovery. I woke up one day, and not one day, but things, I don't know, were easier. They were just, I didn't have to worry about, you know, the potluck at work, or the, you know, the deals going on. I wasn't worried I was going to eat the whole thing and go puke in the bathroom. Sorry if that's too offensive, but I think this disease is a little offensive. But I don't know. Do what is in front of you. Keep it simple. Yeah, get up, brush your teeth. You know, sometimes I was so depressed and so into myself, I couldn't look in the mirror. I couldn't brush my teeth. I couldn't comb my hair. I hated me. I'd have to look at me. Oh, listen, lighten up. Don't take life so serious. That was huge. You know, I in the beginning, when Annette and I were first in there in the meetings, it's just lighten up. We'd laugh at ourselves, because it was funny, the stupid things that we would do. You know, we would just, they said something to me, so I had to go stuff my face, and, you know, they said something that hurt my feelings. Well, that's life, you know, and just, I have to laugh at me. And I do that at work a lot. You know, I have to laugh at me, or else I'm going to cry, you know, sometimes. But, and doing the work is important. You know, some days though, some days it's easier than others, you know. Do a little bit, do what you can, just something, a sentence, and then just dwell on it for a minute. Focus on the positive and seek balance in everything. Focus on the positive. That's something that we learned was so huge, because I mean, I have no problem focusing on the negative. Negative's piece of cake. I'm piece of crap, you know, and everything I do is piece of crap. So that's piece of cake. But it's a challenge to, I mean, write a gratitude list, you know, and think of positive things about me, and things that I, you know, positive things I've done, you know. That it's just, I have a hard time with that anyway, but I can do that today, you know, and that's what's cool, is I can look at those positive things. I don't focus so much on the negative, because that was part of my downfall, is getting into that negative, and it was just a spiraling, never-ending pit of doom, and it was so blah. I wanted to die for people around me, because I was so pathetic. But I don't know. Keep taking stock of where you are and respond accordingly. And that's that 10th step. That's that 10th step that Annette really, that's so important. Even before you even work the steps, you can start that 10th step, and just looking at where I'm at throughout the day, you know, and how things are going, and what I can do different, and what my response was and is, and how it could be. Stay accountable for your thoughts and actions. Accountability is huge. And that's that secrecy thing that Keo was talking about, is my eating disorder wanted me in secret, because, you know, it did. And, but talking about things and talking to people and just talking about our experiences together, and that's what we learned in the beginning, is huge. And okay. And let's see, what's another one? Find gratitude for what you have. You know, that's something that I talk to my daughter, you know, when she's getting down to, I can look at things going wrong, but if I step back a second and just gain a different perspective, I can see that things are going right, you know, and that's what happened in this last year or so is I had a caca year, and and you know, Annette was a big part of just looking at what's going right. Okay, you know, and it's hard, but it's true, because the big picture, it's the big picture that I have to keep my eyes on, not all this little stuff. You know, the little stuff will eventually take care of itself. I'm not going to be homeless. I'm not going to be, you know, these things aren't going to happen. Even if they did, I have a tent. There you go. But I don't know. It's keeping my eyes on what's really important. And if you've ever had you know, any kind of trauma or any kind of death, I think that's where I first found what's really important, really matters. Is after my mom died, I really went through a time where I couldn't stand people's drama, because that's not important. All that stupid drama, you know, none of that's important. It was the big picture and who I have in my life and who I care about and who loves me. And that's what's important. And then one of the last ones here is getting into service. It is an important aspect of balance. Yeah, it's not all about me, and I need to look outside myself and give back, and see. It's not the big, you know, and it's not those big things that I do. It's the little things. You know, I don't have to be doing some major thing. I can help this, you know, kid at work who's having a crappy day. You know, I can help the old lady who's lost or lost her husband. It's just those little things. And it just, you know, I might be doing it for selfish reasons, but I'm giving back, you know. And something else that I talk to my daughter about is when she's really depressed and really down, I tell her, go to the store. When you're at the store, look at somebody in the eye and just say hi, you know, and just get out of yourself for that 1 second. And it just changes the perspective. Because I know for me in this disease, I can get depressed and down a lot. And so it just helps a little bit to get out of yourself. And with that, I will throw it back to Annette.
Thank you, Giselle. And I know we're short of time. My story is pages 243 to 261. And the main thing I wanted to convey is just that if I can recover, anybody can recover. Okay, with that, I'm going to pass to Nuria. Please go ahead, Nuria.
Well, you off the hook since you'll be doing so much more. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. You know, my story is not very different from anyone else's. You know, I just didn't, we all have a past, and at least in my case, you know, I didn't know how to deal with the past. I didn't know how to like make good decisions today. And I was always like living in the future, and my life evolved around like using my eating disorder as life solutions. And, you know, when I did go to treatment at 19, I was told I would always have an eating disorder. Now this was back in like 97. And I at that point I had accepted that and just assumed that was the way life was going to be. And like, how else would it be? You know, everything was always about food, body, and weight. Like, how else do you deal with your emotions? You know? And so luckily it's so amazing, because having had the opportunity to go through these steps, to continue working these steps, you know, Kale brought up what Pastor John said, you know, simple ongoing program to help me protect, you know, help me protect my freedom that I've gotten. You know, I worked these steps, I became a part of the fellowship, and that's what is part of my story. It's like, you know, as I was working these steps and learning how to live these steps and apply these steps, you know, really throwing myself into like recovery, not just like in the meeting for the hour, you know, here and there, but like really the fellowship, the reaching out to people, letting people reach out to me, not making it all about me, and having fun, you know, inside and outside of the fellowship. And this has become a way of life, you know, not just like, you know, talking about eating disorders as a whole, but just how I apply everything in my life now. And that's, you know, that's why it is a life solution, because not only is it like the solution to recover from my eating disorder, it's also the solution to stay recovered from my eating disorder. You know, my story there hasn't been a pause at all in my recovery. Ever since someone took me through the steps, I've reworked the steps multiple times. I've always been going to meetings and starting meetings and sponsoring as many people as I can at one time. But I also, the balance thing, you know, is now the thing that I've been focusing, well, not focusing on, it's an ongoing thing that I've always had to continue working on because I want to try to help as many people, because it is exciting to be a part of this. It's like, wow, I truly am recovered, and like there's so many of us and so many people in recovery, and like it's so exciting. But as we've talked about, it's still learning to stay in balance and take care of the basic needs, because if I'm not taking care of those basics, how can I be helping other people? And it is really, no matter what I've experienced in life, being in recovery from my eating disorder, this solution, the same tools that got me into recovery are the same ones that keep me recovered. It is really that simple. And that's all I have to, and you'll read more about it in the story, page 262. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Nira. You rock. You really do. Okay, so we have some assignments for next week, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows what they are, so I'm going to cover them real briefly. We have a lot of reading. There's chapter 1, Giselle's Story of Hope, Free at Last, a life solution that Nuria just talked about her story. Chapter 1, or step 1 in chapter 5, which is pages 110 to 117. Please read those. And then there's a little bit of writing. So write about your examples of powerless, which is one thing, and unmanageability, which is actually a separate thing. Powerlessness and unmanageability. That's workshop worksheet page 3. And then there's more reading. So chapter 2, there is a solution, and chapter 3, more on eating disorders. Next time, we're going to spend way more time on Q&A. We do have a few minutes left for Q&A, so anybody, *6 to unmute, or Alt-A if you're on a computer, and we'll have others that are sponsors answer your questions. So please, if you've got questions, don't all talk at once, but please do. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead. Hi, we can't hear you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, what time is the meeting and what day? This 16-week study. 'Cause I got in there and it was already going and I had the wrong number and...
Whoops. Well, I'm so sorry. The information about the meeting is on the EDA website. The schedule is on the home page. It does start at 6:15 Mountain Standard Time. I think that might be wrong on the website because it changed from 6:30 to 6:15. So
okay,
it goes
what is that?
6:15 to 7:15 Mountain Standard Time, which if you look at the world time clock, again, just Google world time clock and you can find it in your area.
Okay, so I'm on Pacific time and I'm listening into it now and it's 7:15.
Yep,
so
that's
that
right.
the same as Pacific time? Okay.
Yes, it
And
is.
it's on Thursdays.
Okay. All right. Somebody else?
Okay, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Go ahead.
This is Anna. Thank you for this meeting. This was delightful. It's great to hear everybody, talking from their experience. And so this is for question and answers about like what was read and talked about, right?
Anything.
Okay, anything, just making sure, because I was like, is it after the meeting? Because I missed something, because I am tuning out a bit, and writing things down. But in so far as like some, people were mentioning that it's about like feeling our feelings and, taking care of those kinds of loose ends, like, because I consider my feelings loose ends, they tag along. I just wondered if anyone, could share on like, okay, what does that look like? Does it look like expressing how I feel about things or just acknowledging how I feel, or like how, because I was just starting to think, well, how I could incorporate that, because I do suppress it, and at least making it myself aware of it seems like it's a helpful thing. But insofar as like expressing it, I don't know. I'm not so good at it. I mean, I don't want to, either I can do overkill on expressing it, like I'm very mad with you, or I can do underkill where it's like, oh no, nothing's wrong. So just kind of get that perspective.
So it sounds like you're asking, what does it look like to feel your
Yeah.
feelings? Because again, in an eating disorder, that doesn't come naturally to most of us, right? So does one of the sponsors want to take that? Because we have a lot of folks that dialed in that are sponsors, and I don't want to be doing all the talking here.
Hi, this is Diana. I can take that one.
Sure, go ahead, Diana.
So when I was starting to try to express my feelings, because I would internalize everything, and I had to start with talking to someone I trust, and it was only one person at that time, and I was communicating through email, and so I would literally just type out everything I was feeling, and then I would sit there and read it and question whether I should really send it or not, and it really took a lot of effort on my part to be willing to, first of all, write it out. And it was therapeutic for me to even just type it out and read it and kind of express it in that way. Because as long as it was not in my head anymore, it kind of gave me clarity on what I was feeling. And then being willing to send it to somebody else to get feedback. And it was somebody else in the program. So I really trusted their perspective and things like that. So that's where I started. And then I was able to move from there.
Thanks, Diana. And I do just want to point out that page 156, start in the EDA Big Book, talks a little bit about the importance of feelings. Feelings serve a purpose. Feelings actually, when we allow them to register and we really kind of sit with them and we look at why do we feel that way? It's kind of like there's pieces of us that are unsatisfied, expectations that are unmet, needs that are being ignored. There's, it's like there's stuff going on in us, and it's important to pay attention to them because you know what? Some of it will motivate us to be better people. Some of it will motivate us to get things done that need to happen. Some of it will actually build better relationships with people. When I feel creepy about how I just said something weird, you know what? That's an opportunity for me to go fix something because you know what? I screw stuff up every single day. And really engaging with that process of knowing that the feelings serve a purpose that is good and productive. I was terrified of feelings. They were extreme, over the top. I thought I was going to die or somebody else was going to die if I had my emotions. I really thought that, my God, they're irrational. I don't like them. I'd rather just be an automaton. It's like show up, do the work, don't feel anything. But now it's like, my feelings give me the option to look people in the eye and feel that human connection. And I really revel in the love and the sense of like just human bonds that you can form with everybody. I mean, it's not just like people in program or family, it's everybody walking the face of the planet. And it's fantastic. I never thought it was going to feel fantastic, but it does. I know we're out of time, and I am so sorry, but I would like you to write down your questions for next week so we can kind of like run through them. If you can send them in, we can actually just answer them or send them out to the people that are sponsoring, that are dialing in, so that we can have some answers ready to go. I am so excited about this program. I don't know about you, but I am glad to be here, and I know we have to wrap up. We've got another meeting coming in on our heels here at this location, but thank you all for being here. And I wanted to mention that we are self-supporting through our own contributions. So we do take Seventh Tradition. If you're online, you can check us out on the EDA website. Under the support tab, there's a PayPal link. Doesn't hardly work, but please try it anyway. And if you're here in the room, we're going to be donating our money. So the gal who's donating this location is actually going through some stuff that's pretty difficult. And so we're going to actually, I would like you to think of her in your prayers, thoughts and prayers. And if she's opened her house up, she's opened up, she runs a fellowship hall, and she and her family could use your support. So if you're a person that prays, please keep Rachel CH in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you so much. And with that, we're going to close with we'll do the wee version of the Serenity Prayer. Okay, we'll keep it simple. So thank you, everybody. And I'll look forward to hopefully another week with you very soon. So on 3, I don't know. So here we go. There we go. Pinkies. God
God,
grant us the
grant us the
serenity
serenity
to accept the things
to
we
accept
cannot
the things
change,
we cannot change,
courage to change
courage
what
to
we
change
can,
things we
and
can,
wisdom to know the
wisdom
difference.
to know the difference.
Keep coming back. It works if you work it, and
Work
it's
it.
worth it. Hooray! Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you too. Thank you so much for leading the meeting. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your service.